For decades, Keanu Reeves carried a secret that corroded his soul like silent acid, a name carved so deeply into his heart that no amount of time, success, or applause could ever erase it. The world saw a different man. A humble soul. A kind-hearted celebrity. A rare figure in Hollywood who gave more than he took. They saw the smiles. The generosity. The quiet grace. But what they never saw was the silence. A silence so heavy, it echoed louder than any applause he had ever received. Because behind that calm demeanor, behind those thoughtful eyes, Keanu Reeves was hiding something. A truth he had buried for over 30 years. A truth with a name. A name he had never dared to say out loud. Until now. At 59 years old, Keanu had everything most people spent their entire lives chasing. Fame. Respect. Wealth. Admiration. But none of it mattered when the lights went out. None of it followed him into the quiet. Because in those moments, when he was alone with his thoughts, there was always one thing waiting for him. Regret. That afternoon, the sky over the Hollywood Hills was covered in dark, restless clouds. Rain tapped gently against the windows of his modest home, creating a rhythm that felt almost haunting. Inside, Keanu sat alone. No assistants. No cameras. No distractions. Just him, and the ghosts of his past. He wore a faded black t-shirt and a pair of old jeans. Nothing about him suggested he was one of the most recognizable actors in the world. He looked ordinary. But his eyes told a different story. They carried weight. Years of it. Slowly, he opened a drawer hidden beneath a stack of old scripts. Inside was something he hadn't looked at in months. Maybe years. His hand hesitated for just a moment before reaching in. And then, he pulled it out. For decades, Keanu Reeves carried a secret that corroded his soul like silent acid, a name carved so deeply into his heart that no amount of time, success, or applause could ever erase it. The world saw a different man. A humble soul. A kind-hearted celebrity. A rare figure in Hollywood who gave more than he took. They saw the smiles. The generosity. The quiet grace. But what they never saw was the silence. A silence so heavy, it echoed louder than any applause he had ever received. Because behind that calm demeanor, behind those thoughtful eyes, Keanu Reeves was hiding something. A truth he had buried for over 30 years. A truth with a name. A name he had never dared to say out loud. Until now. At 59 years old, Keanu had everything most people spent their entire lives chasing. Fame. Respect. Wealth. Admiration. But none of it mattered when the lights went out. None of it followed him into the quiet. Because in those moments, when he was alone with his thoughts, there was always one thing waiting for him. Regret. That afternoon, the sky over the Hollywood Hills was covered in dark, restless clouds. Rain tapped gently against the windows of his modest home, creating a rhythm that felt almost haunting. Inside, Keanu sat alone. No assistants. No cameras. No distractions. Just him, and the ghosts of his past. He wore a faded black t-shirt and a pair of old jeans. Nothing about him suggested he was one of the most recognizable actors in the world. He looked ordinary. But his eyes told a different story. They carried weight. Years of it. Slowly, he opened a drawer hidden beneath a stack of old scripts. Inside was something he hadn't looked at in months. Maybe years. His hand hesitated for just a moment before reaching in. And then, he pulled it out. The world quiet, as if it was waiting. She had looked at him differently that night. Not like a co-star. Not like a friend. But like someone standing on the edge of something life-changing. And he felt it too. Every second of it. But instead of stepping forward, he stepped back. The memory tightened his chest even now. Decades later. A sudden ringing sound broke through the silence of the room. Keanu's eyes opened instantly. The present rushing back in. His phone. Vibrating against the wooden table. For a moment, he just stared at it. A strange feeling settling in his chest. Something between anxiety and inevitability. Slowly, he reached over and picked it up. "Yeah," he answered. "Keanu, we need to talk." It was his agent. Marcus. And something in his voice wasn't right. Keanu sat up slightly. "What is it?" A brief pause. The kind that usually meant bad news. "There's a journalist," Marcus said carefully. "Vanessa Morrison. She's requesting an exclusive interview." Keanu's expression didn't change. But his grip on the phone tightened. "And?" he asked. "She says she has information about your past, things you wouldn't want becoming public." Silence filled the room. The rain outside grew heavier. Almost as if the world itself was reacting. Keanu didn't need more details. He already knew. Deep down, he had always known this day would come. "How much does she know?" he asked quietly. "I'm not sure," Marcus replied. "But she mentioned something about a love you denied." And just like that, everything stopped. Keanu's chest tightened. His eyes slowly drifting back to the photograph still resting in his hand. "Sandra," he whispered. Even after all these years. Saying her name still felt the same. Dangerous. Beautiful. Unfinished. "What do you want me to do?" Marcus asked. Keanu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the photograph again. At her smile. At the version of himself he used to be. The version that almost chose love. But didn't. For years, he had convinced himself that silence was the right decision. That protecting what they had was more important than risking it. But now, looking back, it didn't feel like protection. It felt like loss. A deep, irreversible loss. His jaw tightened slightly. Something shifting inside him. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Courage. "Accept the interview," he said finally. Marcus hesitated. "Keanu, this could destroy everything." Keanu exhaled slowly. His eyes never leaving the photograph. "No," he said softly. A pause. "It's time." And in that moment, for the first time in 30 years, Keanu Reeves made a decision not out of fear, but out of truth. Because sometimes, the thing you're most afraid of saying is the only thing that can finally set you free. The next morning, the world moved as it always did. Traffic filled the streets. People rushed to work. Phones buzzed with notifications. Everything felt normal. But for Keanu Reeves, nothing was. The drive to the CNN studio felt longer than usual. Not because of distance, but because of what waited at the end of it. Truth. Keanu sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window as the city blurred past him. His reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. Not like the man the world admired, but like someone standing on the edge of something irreversible. His driver tried to make small talk once. Keanu didn't respond. Not because he was rude, but because his mind was somewhere else. Somewhere far in the past. Every memory felt sharper today. Every moment heavier. The beach. The conversation. The silence that followed. And the decision that changed everything. The car finally stopped. CNN Studios. Keanu stepped out. Cameras weren't rolling yet. But the tension. It was already there. Inside, the atmosphere was different. Controlled. Professional. But underneath it all, there was anticipation. People knew something big was about to happen. They just didn't know how big. Keanu walked through the hallway calmly, greeting crew members by name. Just like always. A nod. A quiet smile. The same humility the world loved him for. But today, it felt different. Because behind every step, there was weight. As he approached the studio door, he paused. Just for a second. This was it. No turning back. He pushed the door open. Vanessa Morrison was already there. She stood near the set, reviewing notes on a tablet. Sharp. Focused. Completely in control. When she looked up and saw him, she smiled. But it wasn't warm. It was calculated. Keanu, she said, walking toward him, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. He shook it politely. It's a pleasure. Her grip was firm. Her eyes, searching. She wasn't just greeting him. She was studying him. Looking for cracks. Ready? Efficiently. But even they felt it. This wasn't going to be a normal interview. Rolling in 5, someone called out. Keanu rested his hands on his knees. His fingers tapping lightly. A habit he had never fully outgrown. 4. 3. 2, and then, silence. The red light turned on. Vanessa's expression shifted instantly. Professional. Precise. Good evening, she began smoothly, looking directly into the camera. Tonight, we sit down with one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. She turned slightly toward Keanu. A man known not just for his talent, but for his kindness. A brief pause. But behind every public image, there are private truths. The air in the room changed. And tonight, we explore one of those truths. Keanu felt it immediately. The shift. The direction. No build-up. No easing in. Straight to the point. Keanu, Vanessa said, turning fully toward him, you've built a reputation as one of the most genuine people in Hollywood. A small pause. But there's a part of your life, she leaned forward slightly, that the public has never truly understood. Keanu didn't respond. He just listened. Watched. Waited. There's a woman, Vanessa continued. A woman you've worked with, been close to, for over 3 decades. The studio felt smaller. Tighter. And yet, she said, her voice sharpening just slightly, there are those who believe that what you've presented to the world, pause, was never the full truth. Keanu's throat felt dry. But his face remained calm. Would you like to clarify that? She asked. A trap. Clear. Calculated. Keanu exhaled slowly. I've been fortunate to work with many talented people, he said carefully. Neutral. Safe. But Vanessa didn't miss a beat. Sandra, she said directly. And just like that, the name was out. No more avoiding it. No more distance. She reached down and picked up a folder. Thick. Filled. Let's not pretend we don't know who we're talking about, she added. The first photograph slid onto the table. Keanu's eyes dropped to it. Him. Her. A moment he didn't even know had been captured. You've maintained this narrative for 30 years, Vanessa said. But people who were there, another photo, saw something very different. Keanu's chest tightened. Crew members from Speed, she continued, say the chemistry between you two was so intense. Another pause. You'd forget you were acting. The words landed hard. They said the love scenes didn't feel like scenes. Another photo. They felt real. The room was silent. Completely still. Even the crew had stopped shifting. Because now, this wasn't just an interview. This was exposure. And then there's the rap party, Vanessa continued. You disappeared together. Keanu's fingers stopped moving. You spent hours on the beach. A pause. And when you came back, her eyes locked onto his. She was crying. The memory hit instantly. Sharp. Clear. Unavoidable. What decision did you make that night? She asked. Keanu's voice came out barely above a whisper. Stop. But Vanessa didn't. After that night, she continued, you both started dating other people. Another pause. Almost desperately. The tension grew heavier. As if you were trying to prove something. Keanu's hands gripped the edge of his chair. And for 30 years, she said quietly, you've both maintained this illusion. Silence. Why? She asked. And this time, there was no escape. Because the question wasn't just from Vanessa. It was from time. From memory. From regret. And for the first time, Keanu didn't have an answer ready. Because the truth was no longer something he could hide behind. It was something he had to face. And as the cameras continued to roll, the man the world thought they knew was about to disappear. And in his place, something real was about to emerge. Something raw. Something honest. Something that would change everything. The silence in the studio became suffocating. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that feels heavy. Loaded. Like something was about to break. Keanu sat still. Too still. His hands gripped the edge of the chair, knuckles slightly pale. His breathing, uneven. For years, he had mastered control. Control over emotions. Control over reactions. Control over pain. But today, that control was slipping. Why? Vanessa repeated. Her voice softer this time. But sharper. More dangerous. Why spend 30 years pretending? She asked. Keanu didn't answer immediately. Because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't clean. It wasn't something you could explain in a sentence. It was fear. It was timing. It was regret. And it was love. A kind of love that never really goes away. Even when you try to bury it. You built an image, Vanessa continued. A story. She leaned forward slightly. But people who were paying attention, pause. They saw through it. Keanu's jaw tightened. Friends don't look at each other like that, she said. Each word, precise. Friends don't avoid each other like that. Another pause. Friends don't spend decades hiding something that obvious. The words echoed. Not just in the studio. But inside him. Because every sentence was a mirror. Reflecting something he had spent years trying not to see. And then, it happened. A small sound. Almost unnoticeable. But in that silence, it was everything. A breath. Shaky. Uncontrolled. Keanu lowered his head slightly. His hand moved to his face. Covering his eyes. And just like that, the walls cracked. For a moment. No one spoke. Not Vanessa. Not the crew. Not even the world watching from behind their screens. Because they all understood something. This wasn't acting. This was real. When Keanu finally spoke, his voice was different. Not controlled. Not measured. But raw. "You want to know the truth," he said quietly. Vanessa didn't interrupt. She just watched. Because this was what she had been pushing for. But even she didn't expect it to feel like this. "I was a coward." The words landed heavily. Simple. Direct. Unfiltered. Vanessa blinked. That wasn't the reaction she had prepared for. No denial. No deflection. Just truth. "I loved her," Keanu continued. His voice trembling slightly. "From the very beginning. The studio felt frozen in time. And I was terrified." A pause. Terrified that I wasn't enough. His eyes lifted slightly. Not fully. Just enough to show the pain behind them. Terrified that if I tried, I'd lose her completely. Each word came slower. Heavier. "So I told myself," he continued, "that what we had was enough." A faint, almost broken smile appeared for a second. That friendship was safer. Silence. "And I convinced myself that choosing safety," he swallowed, "was the right thing." Another pause. But it wasn't. The words barely came out. "It cost me everything." The room didn't move. No one shifted. No one spoke. Because in that moment, everyone felt it. Not just as a story, but as something human. Something real. Something painfully relatable. Vanessa opened her mouth slightly. But stopped. Because for the first time, she wasn't in control. The narrative had shifted. Completely. Keanu slowly straightened up. His hands dropping back to his lap. There were tears in his eyes now. But something else too. Clarity. A kind of quiet strength. "I never stopped loving her," he said. The words were steady now. Clear. Certain. Not for a single day. The statement hung in the air. Unchallenged. Undeniable. Vanessa frowned slightly. Trying to regain control. "But if that's true," she said carefully, "why stay silent?" A fair question. A dangerous one. Keanu let out a slow breath. "Because time passed," he said. "And the longer I waited, the harder it became." His eyes drifted somewhere distant. Then life happened. A pause. Careers, relationships, expectations, another pause. And suddenly, it felt too late. The honesty in his voice was disarming. There was no performance left. No image. Just truth. "And after a while," he continued, "you start believing that maybe, you missed your chance." The words landed quietly. But their weight was enormous. Vanessa studied him. Carefully. Because now, this wasn't just a story. This was something else entirely. Something deeper. Something she hadn't fully anticipated. "And what about her?" Vanessa asked. Keanu looked up. Fully this time. And for a moment, there was no hesitation. No fear. Just honesty. She deserved better. The answer came instantly. She deserved someone who wasn't afraid. A pause. Someone who didn't hesitate. His voice softened. Someone who chose her, without doubt. Silence. "And you didn't think that could be you?" Vanessa asked. Keanu shook his head slightly. "Not back then." Another pause. I didn't know how. The admission was quiet. But powerful. Because sometimes the hardest truth to accept isn't that you lost someone. It's that you let them go. And now, for the first time in 30 years, Keanu Reeves wasn't hiding from that truth anymore. He was facing it. Completely. And as the cameras continued to roll, the world watched a man finally tell the truth he had spent a lifetime avoiding. But what no one knew yet was that this was only the beginning. Because the truth he had just revealed was nothing compared to what he was about to say next. Something deeper. Something no one expected. Something that would change everything. Forever. The studio remained completely still. Not a single sound. Not a single movement. Keanu's last words still hung in the air like something fragile. Something that could shatter at any moment. She deserved better. Vanessa sat back slightly. For the first time since the interview began. She wasn't pushing. Vanessa sat back slightly. For the first time since the interview began. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't attacking. She was listening. Because something had changed. This wasn't an interrogation anymore. This was a confession. But what Keanu said next, no one was ready for. He reached slowly toward his jacket. Every movement deliberate. Calm. The kind of calm that only comes after a storm inside you settles. From the inner pocket, he pulled out something small. Old. A flip phone. The kind no one uses anymore. The kind people forget exists. A few crew members exchanged confused glances. Vanessa frowned slightly. This, Keanu said quietly, holding it up, has only one contact. He flipped it open. The soft click echoed in the silent studio. He turned the screen toward the camera. One name. Sandy. A visible shift moved through the room. Confusion. Shock. Curiosity. You've kept a separate phone? Vanessa asked, her voice no longer sharp. Keanu nodded. For 15 years. The words landed heavily. For her. Vanessa blinked. But, why? She asked. Keanu looked down at the phone. His thumb gently brushing over its surface. Because I never trusted myself with the truth, he said. Silence. So I created distance, without letting go. The contradiction hung in the air. Beautiful. Painful. Every year, he continued, on the anniversary of Speed's release, a faint smile touched his lips. She sends me a message. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. What does it say? Keanu looked up. 2 words. A pause. Happy anniversary. The simplicity of it made it hurt even more. And I reply, he added softly, best summer of my life. The studio felt heavier again. Because in those few words, there were decades of meaning. Decades of things left unsaid. You stayed in contact all these years? Vanessa asked. Keanu nodded. Not the way people think. A pause. But enough to know that she was always there. His voice softened. And I was always there too. Vanessa swallowed. Because now, his story she thought she understood was slipping away from her. And that's not all, Keanu said quietly. He reached into his jacket again. This time, he pulled out something thicker. A small bundle. Papers. Folded. Worn. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. What is that? Keanu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked forward. closer to the table, and gently placed them down. "These," he said, "are messages." Vanessa leaned closer. "They look handwritten." Keanu nodded. "They are." A pause. "Letters." The room held its breath. "How many?" Vanessa asked. Keanu exhaled slowly. "I stopped counting." Silence. "But I've been writing them, for 30 years. The words hit like a shockwave. 30 years? Vanessa repeated. Keanu nodded again. "Every birthday. Every holiday. Every moment I missed her so much," his voice cracked slightly. "I thought I wouldn't make it through the day." The studio felt different now. Not tense, but emotional. Heavy in a completely different way. "Did you ever send them?" Vanessa asked quietly. Keanu shook his head. "Not one." A deep silence followed. "Because that was something no one expected." "Why?" she asked. Keanu looked at her. And for a moment, there was no hesitation. "Because sending them would have made it real." A pause. "And I was afraid of what real would mean." Vanessa had no immediate response. Because for the first time, there was nothing to challenge. Nothing to expose. This wasn't scandal. This was something deeper. Something human. "And there's more," Keanu said. His voice steadier now. Stronger. He stepped back slightly. "There's something else I never told anyone." Vanessa's attention sharpened instantly. Because even now, there were still secrets left. "What is it?" she asked. Keanu looked toward the camera. As if he wasn't speaking to Vanessa anymore. As if he was speaking to someone else. Someone watching. Sandy, the name landed softly. But it carried everything. "There's a house," he continued. "A house in New York." Vanessa frowned slightly. "What about it?" Keanu smiled faintly. "Not out of happiness. But memory. You once told me. It was your dream house." The studio was completely still. "We walked past it during a shoot, and you said if you ever settled down, that's where you'd want to live." A pause. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. "I bought it." The words echoed. Quiet. But powerful. "You bought it?" she repeated. Keanu nodded. "In 2010. Silence. "And it's been empty," a small pause. "Ever since." The weight of that statement was almost unbearable. "Why?" Vanessa asked. But she already knew. Still, she needed to hear it. Keanu looked directly at the camera again. "Because I told myself," his voice softened. "That one day," a pause. "I'd find the courage," another pause. "To ask her to live there with me." The studio fell into absolute silence. Not even the cameras seemed to move. Because in that moment, this wasn't just a story anymore. This was a life. A life shaped by love. And fear. And time. And now. For the first time in 30 years. All of it was finally being spoken out loud. Vanessa sat frozen. Because she realized something. She wasn't controlling this anymore. She wasn't even part of it. She was just witnessing it. And what she was witnessing was something far bigger than an interview. It was a man. Finally telling the truth he had carried his entire life. But what she didn't realize yet was that Keanu wasn't finished. Because the next thing he was about to do would change everything. Not just for him, but for her. For the world. And for the woman who had unknowingly been at the center of it all. For 30 years, the studio no longer felt like a studio. It felt like something else. Something heavier. Something real. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the air itself felt still. As if the entire world was holding its breath. Keanu stood there quietly. The old flip phone still in his hand. The letters resting on the table. The truth. Finally out in the open. Vanessa Morrison, for the first time in her career, had nothing to say. No sharp question. No calculated move. Because this wasn't her interview anymore. This was something else entirely. Keanu slowly looked up. His eyes finding the camera. But this time, he wasn't speaking to the audience. He was speaking to her. Sandy, he said softly. The name carried differently now. Not hidden. Not protected. Free. I know you're watching. Miles away. In a quiet living room. A television screen flickered softly. And in front of it, she sat frozen. Her hands trembling. Her eyes filled with tears she wasn't even trying to hold back anymore. Sandra. For 30 years. She had lived with questions. What if? Why didn't he say anything? Did he ever feel the same? And now. Every answer was unfolding in front of her. Back in the studio. Keanu took a slow breath. There's something I never told you, he continued. His voice steady. But heavy with emotion. Something I should have said a long time ago. He reached into his jacket once more. And pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. Worn. Fragile. Like it had been carried for years. I wrote this. 30 years ago, he said. The studio leaned into silence. This was what I wanted to say to you, the night you called me. Sandra's breath caught. Because she remembered that night. Every second of it. You were crying, Keanu said softly. You told me you didn't want to do Speed 2 without me. A pause. You said it wouldn't feel the same. Tears rolled down his face now. But he didn't stop. And I told you, his voice broke slightly. That you'd be fine without me. Silence. That you didn't need me. A long pause. But that wasn't the truth. He slowly unfolded the paper. His hands trembling slightly. This was the truth. The camera zoomed in slightly. And then. He began to read. Sandy. I can't do Speed 2, his voice shook. Because I'm in love with you. The words hit like lightning. Across the country. Sandra covered her mouth. A sob escaping before she could stop it. And I can't pretend to fall in love with you on screen, Keanu continued, when what I really want, a pause, is to love you in real life. The studio was completely still. Every time I look at you, I forget we're acting. Every time you smile, I feel something I don't understand. And it terrifies me. His voice cracked completely now. Because I don't want to lose you. A pause. And I'm afraid, that if I tell you the truth, I will. Silence. So instead, I'm choosing distance. Not because I don't care, but because I care too much. Keanu stopped reading. His hands slowly lowering. I carried that with me for 30 years, he said. I never gave it to you. The weight of that moment was indescribable. Back in her living room. Sandra was crying openly now. Not out of sadness. But release. Because after 30 years, she finally knew. Keanu stepped closer to the camera. No hesitation left. No fear. Sandra Bullock, his voice was firm now. Clear. I love you. The words echoed. I have always loved you. Another step forward. And I will always love you. Vanessa sat frozen. The entire world watching. Frozen. Every relationship I had failed because it wasn't you. Every time I smiled, it was missing something. You. Tears streamed down his face. But he didn't wipe them away. Because for the first time, he wasn't hiding. I know I don't deserve a second chance, he said. I know I waited too long. A pause. But I can't stay silent anymore. His voice softened. If there's even a small part of you that still feels what I feel, then please, his voice broke again. Give us one more chance. Silence. Pure. Complete. Then, Keanu looked down at the phone in his hand. The same phone he had carried for 15 years. The same number he had never dared to call. Until now. This is me finding the courage, he said quietly. And then, he dialed. Each beep echoed like a heartbeat. In her living room. Sandra's phone lit up. She froze. The name on the screen. One she never thought she would see again. Keanu. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. The entire world. Watching. Waiting. Then, she answered. Hello. Keanu. Her voice was soft. Shaking. But warm. Back in the studio. Keanu closed his eyes for just a second. Relief. Hope. Fear. All at once. Hi. Sandy, he whispered. And in those 2 words, 30 years of silence disappeared. I've been watching, she said. A small laugh broke through her tears. I've been watching the whole time. Keanu smiled. A real smile. For the first time in decades. Sandy. Do you remember what I said that night? She interrupted gently. Keanu paused. You said. You were falling in love with me. A soft silence followed. No, Sandra said. Her voice stronger now. I said, a pause. I was already in love with you. The world stopped. I had been, since the first day. Keanu's breath caught. And I was scared, she continued. Because I thought, you could never love someone like me. The truth hit harder than anything before it. Because all these years, they weren't protecting each other. They were hiding from the same fear. And losing everything because of it. Back in the studio. Tears streamed freely down Keanu's face. But this time, they weren't just pain. They were something else. Hope. Real. Fragile. Beautiful hope. And for the first time in 30 years, their story was no longer unfinished. It was finally beginning.